the initial thought of Romeo and Juliet is a love story, and it clearly is a love story at heart, but there's a lot more going on around it. It shows the relationship between two complete opposing families, points out the political aspect of things. Friendship, it's about friendship as well. It's about friendship between friends who are of the same age, friends who are not necessarily within the same age range, like the Friar and Romeo, or the nurse and Juliet. And it's also about developing relationships that weren't necessarily there to begin with, and mental health, which is the kind of which lies beneath the love story for every character in some ways. For example, Romeo is an extremely complex character, and I think he's quite underrated in some ways, because he begins with a certain perspective on things. He listens to his heart most of the time, and that kind of leads him on a different path, which ultimately brings him to a point of committing suicide, essentially. The Friar is kind of introduced as the trusted friar. He's religious, and people look up to him. He's wise, and this is what everyone kind of knows. This is the surface of his character, But for me, that was also very clear that he's a friar. But instantly, when I started reading, his very first monologue is him in the garden, and he's talking about the plants and herbs, and how there's great in bad stuff and equally bad stuff in greatness. He says,
"Many for many, virtues excellent, none but for some, and yet all different. Oh, mickle is the powerful grace that lies in plants, herbs, stones, and their true qualities."
And initially, when I was looking into the character, I really wanted him to be more of a kind of a hippie, down to earth kind of guy. He's into his plants. He's intelligent from a scientific perspective, let's say, rather than a religious perspective. Obviously, he believes in God, but there's more indications of him being a wise man, and he knows his craft in Romeo and Juliet, the script, than there is to him being a holy man and him going to church and doing this and that. He's all about problem solving. He's not black and white. He's not a tunnel vision man. It's all greys with him, and he tries to come up with solutions on the spot, or he already has solutions prepared in his mind. So he kind of thinks on his feet, and he doesn't deal with things too emotionally, but he is a kind and gentle man, and he's got a very strong relationship with Romeo, and this relationship actually develops to a point where he's quite emotionally attached to him, and he is concerned about what he's doing, and he reacts on what Romeo does, and likewise with Juliet as well. So he's got that quality of wanting to maintain things, and he believes that nothing is ever fully destroyed.
"What? Rouse thee, man! Thy Juliet is alive! For whose dear sake thou wast but lately dead, there art thou happy. Tybalt would kill thee, but thou slewest Tybalt. There art thou happy too. The law that threatened death becomes thy friend and turns it to exile. There art thou happy. A pack of blessings lights upon thy back. Happiness courts thee in her best array, but like a misbehaved and sullen wench, thou pouts upon thy fortune and thy love. Take heed, for such die miserable."
What drives the Friar is love, I think. So he loves Romeo, and he wants to guide him in the best possible way, because he doesn't, obviously, as as Romeo says in the play, that he doesn't have a great relationship with his dad, so he's automatically drawn towards Friar. So Friar is ultimately trying to father him in some way. But as well as that, his ultimate drive is to bring peace to the two families. That is his ultimate goal, and that's what he wants to do. And even though that caused the death of many, Romeo, Juliet, Tybalt, and others, Mercutio, he still achieved that at the end of the play. That was his ultimate goal, and he got the two families, he got the two fathers to shake hands. Now, I'm not saying he was happy about that, but that was his ultimate goal, so essentially he achieved that. Now, that brought many things, but he achieved that, so.
Give me thy hand, for this is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand.
But I can give thee more, for I will raise her statue of pure gold, that, while Verona's by that name is known.
I think I was sitting in the shopping centre one day, and I was just looking at everyone. This is kind of where I started from. I was like, let me just look around and see who would be a kind of friar, I suppose you could say, an earthy man who's, how did they walk? Or I started just looking at people and just seeing the movement on that. I guess it kind of came in first. It was just a gathering of different people and different occupations that kind of brought him to who he is in the play. In the first scene when he's in the garden, he's in bare feet, and it's the only time you actually see him outdoors. So he wears bare feet outdoors, but he wears shoes indoors. So again, it was a very small touch, but it was just to kind of add a little bit more to his character and to naturalize that. I guess for me the best way was to just look at regular people with regular jobs and who could be not necessarily friar, but a wise man.
Yeah, we can still mostly see your face.
Yeah.
And
I would end
you're
up
going to
here.
yes, if you're going to comfort him.
Mm-hmm.
You've turned to the friar to ask, is the hateful thing. So that means that you're fully facing the door.
So you'll be down there by then, yeah?
No, you're fully squared up against the
Okay.
door.
Oh.
The door, square up a bit more. Yeah, so he sits there and there's that diagonal going on.
Yeah.
Not a masking one.
Yeah.
It's in both faces.
In Act 3, Scene 2, the banishment scene, which is also my favourite scene, the way we went about creating this scene and staging it was very simple to begin with. Me and Quaylon were like, okay, let's just read through the text and see what it means, and just kind of try to understand it naturally. And so we tried out a few things to begin with. We had me and Quaylon said, okay, Quaylon, why don't you just sit there and you listen to like depressing teenage music, and I come in and I'm eating peanuts and everything's just fine, and hey, do you want some peanuts? Just kind of a light heart and just trying out different ways of doing it. And then we realised that Romeo is actually a lot more damaged by this. Try to understand it a bit deeper and see what's actually happening in the scene and whose perspectives are the most important. So then we realised that in that scene, most of the scene is really about Romeo and how his perspective and how his text needs to come across to the audience a lot stronger. So we then worked around with the staging with Peter, and Peter was advising us to work around with corners, and if someone is the main important perspective, they'll be in the centre, and so we kind of worked around that. As we were working in the studio to begin with, we were restricted to a certain space, but we also knew that we were in my cell, and this we also needed to establish what is actually happening in that cell, whether there's any windows, where the entrance is. So we had to establish that and know where people are coming in from. And if a certain character is not speaking, where are they in the room and what are they doing at that point? Likewise with the entrances as well. When a character enters, what's the intention? Where are they going in the cell? Are they just going into the wall? They need to plan out exactly what our intention was and where to stop, and stop with a reason. So we needed to look at that from a physical perspective and a staging perspective. Every day was a new lesson, and as an actor it really helped me develop and also as a human being, it helped me develop as well. So I was pulling out my own life and putting it into acting. I was pulling out things from acting and putting it in my own life. That's the best way I can describe it. And because I hadn't really worked with Shakespeare text before, this was really the only time that I properly dived into it heavily. It was overwhelming, but it was very exciting at the same time as well. And it's only made me want to read more Shakespeare at this stage, and to understand, because it's a very rich text, and I know that I've only seen 10% of what he really is all about, you know, and you know, everything that he's written for every character gets so much attention, and they might have a very small part, but they're defined in those 4 lines they have, and I think that's a very interesting thing.